Jake suppressed a yawn as he slouched into the gleaming amphitheater of the Galactic Federation Academy. The excitement of being the first human admitted had worn off faster than a cheap coat of nail polish on prom night. Now, 2 months in, he was just trying not to fall asleep during another tedious sociology lecture. Today, class will be discussing the concept of deathworlds and their impact on sentient species development. Professor Zilblax announced, her tentacles waving with what passed for enthusiasm among the Gloxians. Jake perked up slightly. Finally, a topic he could relate to. He settled back, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. This ought to be good. Deathworlds, Zilblax continued, her voice taking on the reverent tone reserved for particularly gruesome topics. Are planets with environmental conditions so harsh that the evolution of sapient life is considered nearly impossible. Impressible. These rare celestial bodies are characterized by extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, dangerous flora and fauna, and unpredictable weather patterns. A collective shudder rippled through the classroom. Jake had to stifle a snort. If they thought that sounded bad, wait till they heard about Australian wildlife. Now can anyone name a Class 12 death world? Zilblax asked, her eye stalks swiveling to survey the room. Tentacles, appendages, and various alien limbs shot into the air. Jake kept his hand firmly planted on his desk, content to watch the show. Yes, Glorp. A gelatinous blob of a student near the front row burbled excitedly. Proxima Centauri b. Its solar radiation levels are off the charts. Excellent example. Glorp, Zilblax praised. The ultraviolet bombardment on Proxima Centauri b would liquefy most known forms of organic matter within minutes. Any other examples? Kepler 22 billion, chirped an avian-like creature. Its gravity is 1.6 times galactic standard. Jake couldn't help himself. He let out a bark of laughter, drawing curious and slightly offended looks from his classmates. Is something amusing you, Jake? Professor Zilblax asked, a hint of irritation in her modulated tones. Oh, nothing much, Prof, Jake drawled, leaning back in his chair. Just thinking about how my gran would call that a bit of extra exercise on her morning constitutional. Silence fell over the classroom, broken only by the soft whirring of translator implants struggling to process the concept of a constitutional. I beg your pardon. Zilblax's eye stalks were now fully extended, quivering with a mix of confusion and academic interest. Jake sighed, realizing he'd have to spell it out for them. Look, I hate to break it to you all, but Earth, my home world, it makes your so-called death worlds look like a day at Disneyland. The silence deepened, if that was possible. Jake could practically hear the gears grinding in his classmates' brains as they tried to process this information. That's impossible, Glorp burbled, his gelatinous form rippling with disbelief. Earth is only classified as a Class 3 planet. Hardly more than a garden world. Jake couldn't help but grin. Oh, my sweet summer child, he said, channeling his inner sarcastic grandmother. Let me tell you a thing or two about Earth. He stood up, warming to his topic. First off, our gravity. It's about 2.5 times what you lot consider standard. We grow up with bones dense enough to sink in most of your oceans. And speaking of oceans, ours covers 70% of the planet's surface, filled with creatures that would give your nightmares. A tentative tendril rose from the back of the class. But surely your technology. Jake cut them off with a laugh. Technology. Oh honey, we don't need no stinking technology to survive. We've got something much better, pure, unadulterated human stubbornness. He began pacing in front of the class, getting into his stride. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a planet where the very air can kill you if it moves too fast. We call them tornadoes, and some of us chase them for fun. Our oceans? They spawn massive storms that can flatten entire cities. We call them hurricanes, and we throw parties when they hit. The class was hanging on his every word now, a mix of horror and fascination on their alien faces. But that's just the weather, Jake continued, warming to his theme. Let's talk wildlife. We've got birds that can punch through car windshields, fish that can electrocute you. And don't even get me started on the platypus. It's got venom, a duckbill, and lays eggs. It's like nature got drunk and decided to play Mad Libs with animal parts. Professor Zilblax's tentacles were writhing in agitation. But how do you survive? Jake grinned, a predatory gleam in his eye. Survive? Oh, we do more than survive. We thrive. We look at all this danger and say, challenge accepted. We climb mountains because they're there. We dive into the deepest parts of our oceans just to see what's down there. Heck, we even intentionally jump out of perfectly good aircraft for fun. A small, insectoid alien in the front row chittered nervously. But surely your young are protected, kept safe until maturity. Jake's laughter echoed through the amphitheater. Protected. Oh, that's rich. Let me tell you about a little thing we call childhood. It's basically a non-stop game of try not to die mixed with let's see what happens if I do this obviously dangerous thing. Oh. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You want to know the first thing human children learn? It's not walking or talking. It's how to weaponize gravity. We call it falling, and we do it constantly. But here's the kicker: we get back up every single time. The class was in an uproar now, a cacophony of alien voices exclaiming in disbelief and horror. Jake stood in the center of it all, a smug grin on his face. Professor Zilblax finally managed to restore order, her tentacles flailing wildly. Jake, while your enthusiasm for your homeworld is admirable, I find it hard to believe that such conditions could produce a sapient species. Jake's grin only widened. Oh, Professor, you ain't seen nothing yet. Let me tell you about a little thing we call extreme sports. For the next hour, Jake regaled the class with tales of human daring and, quite frankly, stupidity. He told them about base jumping, free solo climbing, and bull riding. He described the running of the bulls in Pamplona, where humans willingly put themselves in the path of angry, horned beasts weighing over a ton. He explained the concept of mixed martial arts, where humans voluntarily entered cages to beat each other senseless for sport and entertainment. With each new revelation, the horror on his classmates' faces grew. Blorp had retreated into a quivering puddle of goo. The avian creature looked like it was about to molt from sheer stress. But wait, Jake said, holding up a hand. I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. Let me tell you about something we call the Darwin Awards. As Jake launched into his explanation of humanity's penchant for finding new and innovative ways to remove themselves from the gene pool, Professor Zilblax's eye stalks drooped in defeat. She slumped against her desk, her tentacles limp. I think that's enough for today, class, she managed weakly. We'll continue this discussion next time. Class dismissed. As his shell-shocked classmates filed out of the room, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Sure, Earth might be a death trap of a planet, but it was his death trap, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Little did Jake know, his impromptu lecture had set off a chain reaction throughout the Galactic Federation Academy. Word spread faster than a virus in a petri dish, and soon the entire student body was abuzz with tales of the crazy humans and their Deathworld shenanigans. In the cafeteria later that day, Jake found himself surrounded by a crowd of curious aliens, all clamoring for more stories about Earth. Is it true that you have creatures called cats that humans willingly keep in their dwellings? A Florian asked, her fur standing on end at the very thought. Jake grinned, settling into his role as Earth's unofficial ambassador. Oh yeah, cats are great. They're like tiny, furry psychopaths that we invite into our homes. They've got built-in weaponry, claws and teeth sharp enough to shred skin, and they use them liberally. But the best part, we love them for it. The Florian's eyes widened in horror. But why? Jake shrugged. They're cute and they purr. Plus they keep the rodent population down. Well, when they're not too busy knocking things off shelves for fun. A Zigonian with multiple eye stalks leaned in. I heard that humans intentionally ingest poison for recreation. Surely this cannot be true. Jake's laugh echoed through the cafeteria. Oh boy, let me tell you about alcohol. Not only do we drink poison for fun, but we've also turned it into an art form. We ferment fruits and grains, distill the results, and then age them in wooden barrels, all to make the poison taste better. The Zigonian's eye stalks drooped in confusion. But why? Because it makes us feel good, Jake said with a wink. Well, until the next morning anyway. But that's what coffee is for. Coffee. A timid voice piped up from the back of the crowd. Jake's grin turned predatory. Oh, my sweet summer children, let me introduce you to the concept of caffeine addiction. For the next hour, Jake held court in the cafeteria, regaling his fellow students with tales of humanity's various vices and questionable life choices. He explained the concept of fast food. Yes, we know it's killing us slowly. No, we're not going to stop eating it. Extreme couponing is like a battle of wits with corporate America, but with more paper cuts, and the eternal war between dog people and cat people. By the time he got to explaining Black Friday shopping, half the cafeteria was in a state of shock, and the other half was taking furious notes. Let me get this straight, a Vorkshian said, its crystalline structure vibrating with confusion. Once a year, humans voluntarily subject themselves to massive crowds, potential physical harm, and financial ruin, all for the chance to purchase material goods at a slightly reduced price. Jake nodded solemnly. Yep, and the best part, we do it the day after we've gathered with our families to give thanks for what we already have. The Vorkshian's crystals dulled in bewilderment. But that makes no logical sense. Welcome to humanity, my friend, Jake said, clapping the Vorkshian on what he hoped was its shoulder. Where logic takes a back seat to hold my beer and watch this. As the day wore on, Jake found himself becoming something of a celebrity on campus. Aliens of all species sought him out, eager to hear more about the baffling and terrifying world known as Earth. In his xenobiology class, he had to explain the concept of allergies. Yay, sometimes our bodies just decide that harmless things like peanuts or pollen are mortal enemies, much to the horror of his classmates. During physical education, he demonstrated the human ability to walk it off after minor injuries, leading to a mass panic when he casually popped his dislocated shoulder back into place with a grunt and a shrug. By the time evening rolled around, Jake was exhausted but oddly satisfied. He'd never considered himself particularly patriotic, but there was something about explaining the madness of human existence to a bunch of bewildered aliens that really brought out his species' pride. As he collapsed onto his bed in his dorm room, his roommate, a Blorxian named Zix, regarded him with a mix of fear and awe. "Jake," Zix burbled, its gelatinous form rippling with emotion, "I must confess, I find your species both terrifying and fascinating. How do you manage to survive, let alone thrive, in such conditions?" Jake chuckled, staring up at the ceiling. "Honestly, Zix, I think it's because we're too stubborn to know when to quit. We see impossible odds and think challenge accepted. We look at certain death and say, not today, Paul." He rolled over to face his roommate. "You know, there's an old saying on Earth, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that pretty much sums up the human experience." Zix's electron clusters, which served as its eyes, pulsed rapidly. "But Jake, by that logic, shouldn't your entire testes be composed of invincible superdad_thans by now?" Jake burst out laughing. "Superdad_word beings. Oh man, I wish. Now we're still very much mortal. We just refuse to act like it most of the time." He sat up, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Hey, want to hear about this thing we do called parkour? It's basically using the urban environment as our personal obstacle course with a healthy disregard for personal safety." Zax's form quivered in what Jake had come to recognize as a mix of fear and curiosity. I'm not sure I want to, but I suspect you're going to tell me anyway." Jake grinned. "You're learning, buddy. You're learning." As Jake launched into a detailed explanation of parkour, complete with animated hand gestures and sound effects, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Sure, Earth might be a Class 12 Deathworld masquerading as a Class 3 planet, but it was his Deathworld, and if his classmates' reactions were anything to go by, it was the most interesting planet in the galaxy. Little did Jake know, his stories were having a profound effect on the Academy. In the days that followed, the curriculum underwent a rapid and somewhat panicked revision. New courses were added with titles like Human Risk Assessment and Mitigation in Surviving Earth, a comprehensive guide. The Academy's medical bay saw a surge in stress-related visits as students grappled with the existential crisis of realizing that the universe was far more terrifying than they'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, Jake found himself the unexpected star of a new and highly popular extracurricular club, Earth Studies and Survival Techniques. Every week he'd introduce his alien classmates to a new aspect of human culture or history, always with his signature blend of sarcasm and bemused pride. One week, he covered the history of human warfare, leaving his audience in stunned silence as he described everything from the longbow to nuclear weapons. The next, he delved into the world of human entertainment, explaining the concept of reality TV shows like Survivor and Fear Factor. "Let me get this straight," a Quintorian asked, its 5 eyes blinking in rapid succession. "Humans voluntarily eat insects and animal organs for the chance to win currency." Jake nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Yep, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Wait till I tell you about Jackass." By the end of the semester, Jake had become something of a legend on campus. Students would point and whisper as he walked by, a mix of awe and terror in their eyes. Professors sought him out for consultations, eager to understand more about the enigma that was humanity. Even the Academy's administration had taken notice. Jake was called into the dean's office one afternoon, unsure if he was about to be expelled or given a medal. Dean Zorblax, a being composed entirely of swirling gases contained within a force field, regarded Jake with what might have been curiosity. It was hard to tell with a face made of neon-colored clouds. "Mr. Thompson," the dean began, his voice a soothing hum, "I must say your presence at our academy has been enlightening." Jake shifted in his seat, trying not to fidget under the dean's nebulous gaze. Thanks, I think." The gaseous swirls within Dean Zorblax's force field shifted, forming what Jake had learned to interpret as a smile. "Indeed. Your unique perspective has forced us to reevaluate many of our long-held beliefs about the universe and its inhabitants." Jake couldn't help but smirk. "Well, you know what they say on Earth, expect the unexpected." The dean's form rippled in what might have been a chuckle. Yes, I've become quite familiar with your earthen sayings. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade is a particular favorite of mine, although I must confess I'm still unclear on what a lemon is or why one would wish to transform it into a beverage. Jake opened his mouth to explain, then thought better of it. Some things were better left mysterious. Mr. Thompson, the dean continued, his tone growing more serious. I called you here today because the Galactic Federation has expressed a keen interest in your planet. They believe that a species capable of not just surviving but thriving in such extreme conditions could be valuable. Jake's eyebrows shot up. Valuable? How so? The gaseous being shifted uncomfortably. Well, to put it bluntly, they believe humans could make excellent soldiers. Your natural resilience, adaptability, and apparent disregard for personal safety make you ideal candidates for high-risk missions. Jake couldn't help but laugh. So let me get this straight. The Galactic Federation wants to recruit humans as some kind of intergalactic badasses, like space marines or something? The dean's form pulsed in affirmation. That is one way to put it, yes. Jake leaned back in his chair, a wide grin spreading across his face. Oh man, wait till I tell my mom. She always said my love of extreme sports would get me killed. Turns out it might just save the galaxy. The dean's swirling gases took on a concerned pattern. Mr. Thompson, I hope you understand the gravity of this situation. The Federation is considering officially upgrading Earth's classification to a Class 12 death world. This would have significant implications for your planet's place in the galactic community. Jake's grin faded slightly. What kind of implications are we talking about here? For one, the dean explained, it would mean strict quarantine protocols for any non-humans visiting Earth. Your planet would be considered too dangerous for casual tourism or exploration. Jake snorted. Trust me, most of Earth would consider that a blessing. The dean continued, ignoring Jake's interruption. It would also mean that humans would be subject to additional screening and security measures when traveling off-world. Many species might view you as potential threats. Great, Jake muttered. So we'd basically be the galaxy's version of Australia? Dangerous creatures that everyone's fascinated by but too scared to approach. The dean's form rippled in what Jake had come to recognize as confusion. I'm not familiar with this Australia you speak of, but if it's anything like the rest of your planet, I shudder to think what it must be like. Jake chuckled. Oh boy, wait till you hear about the wildlife down under. Makes the rest of Earth look like a petting zoo. The dean's gases swirled rapidly, a clear sign of distress. Mr. Thompson, please, this is a serious matter. The Federation is considering sending a delegation to Earth to assess the situation firsthand. They've requested that you act as a guide and liaison. Jake's eyes widened. Me? But I'm just a student. Surely there are better qualified. You are the only human currently enrolled in a Galactic Federation institution. The dean interrupted. You have demonstrated a unique ability to bridge the gap between human and alien cultures. Who better to introduce the Federation to the realities of life on Earth? Jake sat back, stunned. When he'd applied to the Galactic Federation Academy on a whim and a dare from his best friend, he never imagined it would lead to this. He just wanted to see the stars, maybe learn some cool alien tech. Now he was being asked to potentially shape the future of human-alien relations. So Jake said slowly, you want me to show a bunch of aliens around Earth? Give them the grand tour of our lovely Deathworld. He caught himself. I mean our charming Class 3 planet. The dean's form pulsed in affirmation. Essentially, yes. The Federation wants to understand how humans not only survive but thrive in such conditions. They're particularly interested in your cities, your ecosystems, and your methods of adapting to environmental challenges. A mischievous grin spread across Jake's face. Oh, I've got some ideas. How do you think they'd handle a trip to Death Valley? Or maybe a nice relaxing swim with great white sharks? The dean's gases swirled in alarm. Mr. Thompson, please. The goal is to educate the delegation, not traumatize them. Jake held up his hands in mock surrender. All right. I promise to keep it relatively tame. Then maybe just a stroll through New York City during rush hour, or a visit to a Black Friday sale. The dean's form shimmered, a sign Jake had learned to interpret as resignation. I suppose I'll have to trust your judgment, Mr. Thompson. The fate of human-alien relations may very well rest in your hands. As Jake left the dean's office, his mind was racing with possibilities. He had the chance to introduce aliens to the wonders and horrors of Earth, to show them that humans weren't just survivors, but thrill-seekers who turned their harsh world into a playground. He pulled out his communication device, a sleek, alien tech version of a smartphone, and began composing a message to his parents. Mom, Dad, he typed, grinning to himself. Remember how you always said, I'd either end up changing the world or getting myself killed? Well, looks like I might just do both. How do you feel about hosting some alien diplomats for Christmas dinner? As he hit send, Jake couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a college student from a backwater planet, about to become Earth's unofficial ambassador to the stars, all because he couldn't keep his mouth shut about the crazy things humans did for fun. Life, Jake decided, was about to get a whole lot more interesting. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was making the best of interesting situations. As he walked back to his dorm, Jake's mind was already whirling with ideas. He'd show these aliens the true spirit of humanity, the reckless bravery, the stubborn determination, and the absurd creativity that allowed his species to turn a death trap of a planet into a thriving civilization. And who knows? Maybe by the end of it, he'd have a few aliens signing up for skydiving lessons or entering a hot dog eating contest. After all, if there was one thing Jake had learned during his time at the Academy, it was that the universe was full of surprises. And humans, well, they were the biggest surprise of all. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Jake prepared for the Galactic Federation delegation's visit to Earth. He found himself buried in paperwork, safety waivers, and increasingly panicked messages from the Academy's legal department. No, we cannot include bungee jumping in the itinerary. Read one particularly exasperated email. And for the love of all that is holy, please stop suggesting a running of the bulls experience. Jake couldn't help but chuckle as he scrolled through the messages. These aliens had no idea what they were in for. Finally, the day arrived. Jake stood at the designated landing site, a remote field in the middle of nowhere, USA. He'd argued for a more dramatic entrance, maybe the top of Mount Everest or the heart of Times Square, but apparently, the Federation had strict protocols about first planetary contacts. As the sleek, silver spacecraft descended from the clouds, Jake felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was it, the moment that could change everything for humanity. The ship landed with barely a whisper, its advanced technology making Earth's best rockets look like children's toys. A ramp extended, and out stepped the Galactic Federation delegation. Jake had to stifle a laugh. Despite all his warnings, the aliens were hilariously underprepared for Earth's conditions. They waddled out in what looked like overly bulky hazmat suits, complete with bubble helmets and air filtration systems. "Welcome to Earth," Jake called out, spreading his arms wide. "I hope you packed your sense of adventure, cause you're gonna need it." The leader of the delegation, a tall, willowy being that reminded Jake of a sentient tree, stepped forward. Its voice crackled through an external speaker. "Greetings, human Jake. We are prepared for your world's challenges." Jake grinned. "Oh, I'm sure you are. So who's up for a quick hike to break you in? I know a lovely little trail nearby. Only a few miles, hardly any venomous creatures at all." The aliens exchanged nervous glances, their body language screaming, "What have we gotten ourselves into?" Over the next 2 weeks, Jake led the delegation on a whirlwind tour of Earth's greatest hits. They marveled at the Grand Canyon. Yes, we just jump over it sometimes for fun. Gasped at the power of Niagara Falls. Want to go over in a barrel? No, your loss. And nearly had collective heart attacks during the New York City taxi ride. This is actually pretty calm traffic for a Tuesday. Jake introduced them to the concept of fast food. It's efficient and delicious, even if it might kill you eventually. Took them to a heavy metal concert. This is how we relax. And even convinced a few brave souls to try a roller coaster seat. Controlled falling is fun. Throughout it all, Jake watched with amusement as the aliens' initial terror slowly morphed into a reluctant sort of admiration. They began to understand that humans weren't just surviving on their death world. They were thriving, turning every danger into an opportunity for excitement or innovation. On the final day of the visit, the delegation gathered for their closing remarks. The leader, looking slightly worse for wear but with a new glimmer of respect in its eyes, addressed Jake. "Human Jake," it began, its voice tinged with a mix of awe and lingering fear. "We came to your world expecting to find a species barely clinging to survival. Instead, we found a race of adrenaline junkies," Jake supplied helpfully. The alien nodded. "Yes, that term seems apt. You have shown us that true strength lies not in avoiding danger, but in facing it head-on with a smile and what did you call it, a hold-my-beer attitude?" Jake grinned. "That's us in a nutshell. The Galactic Federation has decided," the alien continued, "to upgrade Earth's classification to a Class 12 death world. But we're also creating a new designation, just for your species. From this day forward, humans will be known as Class X extreme adapters." A cheer went up from the small crowd of human officials who had gathered for the announcement. Jake couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Class X, it had a nice ring to it. Furthermore, the alien added, "We would like to extend an invitation to humanity to join the Galactic Federation. not as protectees but as full partners. Your unique perspective and frankly terrifying abilities could be invaluable in facing the challenges that lie ahead. As the implications of this announcement sank in, Jake felt a moment of vertigo that had nothing to do with Earth's gravity. Humanity, joining the galactic community. The universe wouldn't know what hit it. On behalf of humanity, Jake said, trying to sound official despite the grin threatening to split his face. We accept. Fair warning though, we're probably going to try an extreme sportsify everything out there. The alien leader's shoulders slumped in what Jake had come to recognize as resigned amusement. We would expect nothing less from the species that invented cheese rolling as a competitive event. As the delegation prepared to depart, Jake felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Glorp, his gelatinous classmate from the academy, wobbling excitedly. Jake, Glorp burbled, I've made a decision. I want to transfer to an Earth university. Do you think I could survive your college experience? Jake laughed, slinging an arm around his friend's amorphous form. Buddy, if you can survive my tour, you can survive anything. Just wait till I introduce you to the concept of fraternity hazing. As the alien ship took off, carrying with it the promise of a new era for humanity, Jake couldn't help but feel excited about the future. Humans were about to bring their unique brand of crazy to the stars, and the universe would never be the same. After all, if there's one thing humans excel at, it's turning adversity into opportunity. And now, with the entire galaxy as their playground, who knows what kind of trouble they'd get up to next. Jake grinned up at the sky, imagining the adventures to come. Extreme sports on low-gravity worlds, daring rescues from the hearts of dying stars, maybe even surfing the event horizons of black holes. Watch out, universe, he muttered to himself. The Deathworlders are coming, and we're bringing the party with us. And somewhere out there in the vast expanse of space, the Galactic Federation braced itself for the arrival of its newest, most unpredictable members. The age of humanity had begun, and it promised to be one wild ride.